Nintendo Switch OLED. Let's see what's going on. As always, the first thing we want to check before we plug any power to this device is the port. And it does look like it's been torqued a bit. The fact that it's not loose in the center means we can probably stick some power to this, though I'm not certain we'll get very good connection. Let's see what's going on. This video is brought to you by PCB. We'll talk about their awesome services in a little bit. Using our benchtop PSU, let's plug some power to this. We'll be watching PSU channel 1, the amp meter. We're drawing a 0.1, move it around a little bit and see if we can get a connection. And we cannot get a connection. Let's try our OEM with the meter, and we're not getting recognition in any direction whatsoever. Let's just try our OEM. No power at all. We're going to need to open this up and take a closer look at the carnage. So I'm popping out the shield so we can take a closer look at the port itself. I'm not seeing anything terribly concerning here. We may have a no power problem posing as a port problem. The OLED port also has a shield on the back side. It just pops out. And yeah, I'd say we've had a little bit of a torquing going on there. For your orientation purposes, we will be working on side A. We must remove the port, and then we can test further from there. We have the board out of the housing, and we are set up to remove the port. But in order to do that, I need to set up my equipment. While I set up my equipment, throw up my expected temperatures for this job. These temperatures are brought to you by the Amazon Associate links in the description. If you go to my video description and click on one of these links and buy any of this equipment, a small portion of that purchase will go to supporting the channel. And I greatly appreciate you. It won't cost you an extra dime. We'll switch you over to microscope. First thing we need to do is flood our anchors with low melts. Full disclosure, this is the first OLED port I'm ever doing. Make sure it feeds through. Now we're going to bring the sauce. See if we can't drop this port right off the board. Concentrate in on the anchors first. Get them all wetted. Now we'll concentrate in on the pins on the other side of the board. And it just fell right off. Just like the other switches. And it looks like we lost one pad. That appears to be a ground pad, so we're not going to be concerned about that. Other than that, there are no bridges, so we are clear to do our testing. For your orientation purposes, we have moved up the board to the M92T36, and this is where we'll begin our testing. And what we are testing is the capacitors surrounding the chip. We're going to read the board, and what we don't want to see shorted to ground are the lines going to the chip. So what do I mean by the lines going to the chip? See these little lines that are going to the pins on the chip? We do not want them shorted to ground. So find ourselves a ground pad, and we're going to measure those lines. The other side of the capacitors will be ground. Now this capacitor here has two lines going to the chip. In that case, for it to not be faulty, only one side should be ground. And it is not faulty. Very good. Now for your orientation purposes, we're going to move up the board to the Pi 3 USB area. This is a little different than the OG switch as far as circuitry surrounding the chip. So we're just going to test this big guy right here going to the chip. And it doesn't appear to be shorted. For your orientation purposes, we're going to flip the board over to side B, and we're going to test the BQ24193 area. Same rules apply. Find ourselves a ground, and the lines going to the chip. Though there are several capacitors here with multiple lines going to the chip, one side only should be ground. Alright, everything appears to be okay. That doesn't mean everything is okay. The common fault areas appear to be checking out, so we can proceed with our port replacement. For your orientation purposes, we have zeroed in that the port currently looks like our only problem, so that's what we're going to deal with now. Let's do our standard cleanup. We'll be greatly assisted by the low melt we applied earlier. Placing a ball on our chip. We're going to glide that ball over these pads. We're not looking to really make contact with the pads. More or less just the solder. Sexy. Let's have a nice look at our first OLED port. It's a little different than the originals. And the lights Kind of the same routine on the port as the board. Just want to glide the ball over the pads, over the pins. Excellent. Now inspecting the board, I don't think I have any reason to be concerned that my normal method will not work. I'll have to keep an eye on the bracket. I'll have to keep an eye on this contact. Other than that, we should be okay. I may go ahead and shield these connectors. I do a lot of air movement and it will be moving in this area a little bit, so same routine. We're going to bring up the temperature of the board enough to wet the solder and flow our port into place. Starting to see some evidence of wetting now. There we go. That feels better. Hold it down. Do a very delicate nudge test. Feels pretty solid. I'm going to go ahead and touch up these visible pads. Assuming the pick-up pencil can do this. Very nice. Let's inspect our connectors to make sure we didn't singe or burn any of them. And they all look fine. Excellent. Now we're switching over to side A so that we can work the anchors. Add some flux. I think they'll do. Next step will be to clean the board thoroughly, clean out the port thoroughly, and we'll come back when we're ready to do some power and docking tests. Head over to PCBWay.com, click PCB Instant Quote, and check out their many offerings like Standard PCB, Advanced PCB, FPC and Rigid Flex, Assembly, SMD Stencil, CNC machining, and much more. Check out my link in the description and get your project started today. Now we're ready to perform some power tests. First one we're going to perform is with the benchtop PSU using our USB to 3.5mm dongle. And this is the most unreliable test, but when it works, it tells us that it's activating on both sides of the port. So I still use it. What we want to see here is a quick jump in amperage and back down, but it seems to be playing up with the PSU, which it will sometimes do. Yeah, we're not getting anything. That is not a definitive test. This next test is much more informative. We're using our modified iPhone Power Squid, which we have retrofitted with Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch Lite battery connectors. And what we're going to do here is just quickly activate the switch using the OEM. And what we wanted to see here was a boot up. What we're not seeing here is a boot up. We are getting no evidence of life at all. I'll tell you right now, I miss our test pads. So let's check our fuse. Well, appears to be fine. Now these test pads appear like they should be short, and I don't read any shorts on them. Okay, do we have any on this side? That can tell us anything. Okay, appears to be ground. I don't think these should be short. Okay, so just reading the board, I don't think these should be shorted. But this one is. This one's got a direct short to ground. So I'm wondering if we found our first indicator of an M92 T36 fault that we cannot detect any other way. So this one's for sure ground. And as you can see, there's a little circle around this one, so this one's isolated from ground. Okay. This one is isolated as well. So I think we have a short here. And I'm going to hope that that is M92 T36 somewhere. So we found a short on a test pad under that shield around the port. And we're hoping that removing the M92 T36 where the second target is, further up the board, will remove that short. Let's find out. Full disclosure, this is an educated guess based on history with the other switch models. Those test pads could have nothing to do with this chip, but we're going to find out. We probably could have injected voltage to find out, but we're already here. Let's check our test pad. And our short is gone. Ta-da! We now know that this test pad, or these test pads, are tied to the M92 T36. Love learning new stuff. So, we have learned that this test pad is for sure connected to the M92 T36. Check your test pads. They're very useful. Also, special note, this board does not really have a good orientation mark for the M92 T36. Pin 1 in this orientation of the board with the port facing down goes in the top right. Let's place a new chip. And wet the solder. We're looking for that center pad to wet. We need that center pad to grab the chip before we let go of it. There we go. Grabbed on. And you can kind of get it in place. Remove the heat. Press down. Bring our Pico pencil in and clean up the blobs and the others. And good. Let's pop back down to our port and test our pad again. And we still have no short to ground. Excellent. We'll clean up the board again and begin our testing again. All right, let's see if we get any evidence of life. More evidence than we got before. Okay, that looks relatively normal. Let's try the other side. That looks relatively normal. Good sign, good sign. Let's test with our modified iPhone Power Squid. We'll activate quickly with the OEM. And out. What we want to see here is a steady climb in amperage with no hanging. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Excellent. Let's see if we are docking. Try one way. Nothing there. We'll flip it over and try the other. And there we go. Excellent. We are docking. Our first port was a successful change. And we discovered how to detect an M92T36 fault that does not show around the chip. Excellent. I have an announcement. I, being Micro Mage Repair, am moving back home to Texas. My primary service area in Texas will be North Richland Hills, Hurst, Euless, Bedford, and Fort Worth in general. All mail-in services will be temporarily paused to the month of August and will resume sometime in September when I've worked out all the logistics. If you're a local shop in those areas and need microsoldering services, please reach out. Talk to y'all from Texas in September. There's a couple extra steps you have to take before you put this board back in the housing, and that is to put our shields back on our connector. It appears we have bent our bracket a little bit. There we go. Yeah, snapped in that time. Excellent. And snap it right in. Excellent. We're back up and running on its battery, and I want to perform a couple of tests real fast. Make sure seeing his Joy-Cons and charging them. As you can see on the USB meter, we are charging at 15 volts. And we are recognizing and charging both Joy-Cons. Let's make sure our Bluetooth is working. It is. Make sure we're picking up our networks. And we are. Fan is spinning. Make sure it's reading its game. And it is. Excellent. Another pretty cool repair. We definitely had a port issue, but we had to figure out a very sneaky no power issue. If you got value from this video, check out this one right here, and I'll see you there.